I suppose, yeah, I could make these on the table saw. But frankly, I've got over 100 of them to make. So what should I do? I know! Let's make a stair wedge jig. I've got a few scraps laying about, and I've trimmed them to size. First of all, we're going to actually make the handle. I first scribble the shape of the handle that I want, and I scribble on there pretty frivolously, without much care in the world, and as you can see. So what I do is I go off to the bandsaw and cut it out. Now this bandsaw here is an electrobacon bandsaw with a 1/4 inch or 6mm bandsaw blade, and it is quite blunt. So because I made the mistake of trying to cut chipboard with it, and it had aggregate in it because it was flooring grade chipboard, which seemed to have some nasty stuff in it which bluntens your bands or your blades. As you can see, it's a little bit steep on these turns. Could have done with a narrower blade really. And I could have cut the ends out first with a Forstner bit or a spade bit, and then just cut the difference in between. But anyhow, I just went with the flow and winged it really. And you can see I didn't worry about having an exit or an entrance cut, because that's going to be stiffened up once it's attached to the actual sledge itself. So why worry, eh? As long as it does its job. There you go, look, it's a handle shape. But it's a bit rough on the edges. I could just use a bit of sandpaper and clean it up that way, but I think I'm just going to run it over the round over a bit, just to make it a bit more comfortable. And you can see there the burn marks on there. You can see my bandsaw blade is certainly blunt. Creating that nasty burn. There you go, wiggled it over there, turn that off. And now I think I might need to give it a bit of a sand. So there you go. Oh, there we go. We have a Merca copy type Chinese importy, whatever you like to call it, pneumatic orbital sander, like a DA sander. But it works fine, it's doing the job. Takes all the splinters off. I like splinters because they hurt. Especially when they go end on. You've got to let them fester and then they pop out. There you go, that's a handle. Eee! So now it's more of a case now actually working out where to put all the components. This is me having a bit of fun. And there we go, off to the table saw we go, because I need to know where the little strip of wood's got to be in relationship to the blade. As you can see there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my piece of timber, my bit of plywood there, up against the blade, just past the blade, so it's not actually missing the blade. So if I run it over afterwards, it will trim it exactly to the blade itself. But first of all, I need to work out where I want the little strip of timber. So as a piece of oak in this case, which I'm just going to glue and pin onto the bottom of this piece of plywood. Now I've made a couple of marks, so I know it's going to end up in the correct position. Now this is a 22 gauge pin nailer. I do like using a little pin nailer like that. It's quite handy for little jobs like this, because it's quite non-invasive. The entrance hole is very, very small, so there's no real damage to the surface, unlike an 18 gauge brad nailer, which has a much bigger hole. So it's quite handy for this job, because it's going to be the glue that holds it anyway in the end of the day. And also there'll be some screws going through it as well, which you'll see later to hold the handle on. Now, I felt that the actual piece of plywood, because the scrap I had, a little piece of 10mm 3/8 plywood, was a bit on the thin side for a lot of use for this purpose, really, to comfortably hold my wedge into position. So I thought it'd be a good idea to add an additional piece of timber to it, and there we go. That is a little bit of oak I had scrap laying about. I thought that might work quite well, so I was going to glue that on, and needless to say, I'm going to be using the 22 gauge pin nailer again. I do like my pin nailer. First, a couple of clamps. There's a couple of cheap EF clamps that came from the local, it's a bit like a pound store clamps, but these ones have been quite good. And they're very similar to a brand of clamps that are available in Screwfix in the UK called, I think it's Black Spur or something like that, or Black Forge or something. But here you see here, now I'm going to actually trim the edge of the board. So now we know that that cut is parallel with the slot in the table. The next stage is that we need to have a way of holding our material that we're going to cut our wedge from. Now, I don't know if you can work out the principle behind this now, but you can see I've now marked that around. I've now drawn a line around the wedge itself, which depicts the shape of the wedge I want to create. Now you'll see later the reasoning for this and how it kind of works. Now I'll put a little scrap on the bottom there because I'm going to run it. Because I've put the piece of timber on that runs in the slot, it's a bit sort of like unstable. So I'm going to freehand that wedge shape out. Obviously I can't get all of it because the blade is round and I don't want to cut the bottom of the actual wedge. Did you see that? That was very naughty, wasn't it? Shouldn't do that. Stopping the blade with a piece of wood. Right, so now I'm going to take off the sacrificial piece of wood that's been taken off. Still remove a few little pins at the bottom. They're not needed anymore. Keep that one on there. Now if you notice, I actually trimmed back the piece of the batten that runs in the slot because it was interfering with the run-off table because I haven't got an appropriate slot in the run-off table, so I just cut it off short, so it's not a problem. As you see, I'm just using that Barco paddle saw and finishing off with my tenon saw. Now it's pretty straight and quite flat, but I'm going to make sure it's perfect. I don't want my wedges coming out all different, so I'll make sure that there's nothing in the way that's going to cause it to be inaccurate. So I'll go using the little bull nose snub line there and clean it up. So I'm quite happy that it's nice and smooth and flat there. And now I need to attach my handle. You can see there, can you see the principle? So effectively, whenever I put a piece of timber in there and run it through the table saw, I will end up with a wedge shape. So now we're going to attach the handle to the sledge, and I'm going to place that in the position over the top where the little piece of timber that runs in the slot. I taped it up just to hold it together because obviously I got a cut line in there for when I cut the handle with the bandsaw. So I'll take it off again now. That just prevents it from splitting. Once it's all glued and attached to the sledge, there's not going to be a problem. So we'll make sure there's a little bit of glue in the handle slot as well for what good that is, because end grain is not going to do a lot really, but I suppose that's just me being pedantic. So I use my air drill and countersink bit, and now I'm just screwing the handle to the sledge. Ooh, there we go. I'll come back. Oh, clean it off was a good idea. Yeah. So now we have a sledge with a handle with a special little cutout in it for the actual wedge, and let's see what happens. Let's give it a go, shall we? Oh, look at that! Oh, it goes back and forwards. Isn't that cool? There's some scraps I had laying about. I just cut the length, and I'm going to use them for the wedges. They're a bit of it's a bit of sapwood really, so it's quite close to the edge of the timber. But it doesn't matter for the wedges; they don't have to be the heartwood. As you see, when I ran that through the saw, the front edge trying to lift up because the rotation of the blade gripping the wedge, and potentially it could fly back at you. I thought, well, how am I going to prevent that? Well, I didn't have too much thought to it. All I just got a scrap of wood and thought, that'll do the jobby. So I draw the hole in it, blob of glue. So we're now going to screw it down to the sledge, and if you can see the principle behind that, if you run that now through the table saw, as you run it through, it shouldn't throw them back at you. It lifts them up a little bit, but that doesn't matter as long as it doesn't throw them at you. That's all I care about. I just don't want this wood flying at me. That's the reason why I wear that silly leather apron that makes me look like a murderer. My friend calls it a murderer's apron. Get the blade down a bit lower so it's a more sensible height. You get less lift. Ideally, even that's still a little bit on the high side, but that's fine. It's doing the job. As you run the sledge with your scraps wood, creating your wedges, remember to reverse the piece of wood occasionally so you don't end up with a triangle of wood left at the end and you just waste timber. As you can see, they seem to work perfectly well. That looks okay. That's doing the job. Hey. A bit of glue in there and a couple of pins in to hold it in place, make sure you can't fall out. You've got a stair tread stuck in your string and it's all hunky-dunky. Who's that handsome fella? Oh god, that's me. Oh. Little jig for stair wedges. He's rumbling around again, isn't he? And very, very simple, and it makes the whole process of making stair wedges a darn sight easier. Well then, this little table saw jig here is ideal for creating these little wedges. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed my little video, and if you'd be most kind and click like and subscribe, and maybe the little bell icon, and then you'll get a warm, fuzzy feeling in your pocket, and that'll be me uploading another woodworking video. Oh, thank you for watching. Well, you managed to get to the end of my video. Well, either I must have grabbed your attention, or you just couldn't be bothered to click off. If you'd be most kind and subscribe, and maybe click the little bell icon, because then you'll get a notification every time I upload a new woodworking video. And I know you'd be excited about that. So, hammer that like button, hammer that subscribe button, and comment below